Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. This is June 3rd, 2018. I want to share a little article with you that I ran across this week. How that science is catching up with the Bible. A scientist by the name of David Thaler, T-H-A-L-E-R, of the University of Basel in Switzerland, just published a study in Journal Human Evolution. He says that he is shocked with his own findings. What were his findings? He said that 9 out of 10 known species of animal came into being at roughly the same time. How's that? They're not up through the ooze and the primordial, and then it was this and amoeba, and then it became something, and it was single-celled, and then it was this, and then it became that, and it got, animals. No, he said 90% of what we know about animal species is they all came into being at roughly the same time. Now, he puts that roughly at 100 to 200,000 years ago. He's an evolutionist. He's got to have a lot of time. He told the French press the conclusion is very surprising. And I fought against it as hard as I could. Now, the study was co-authored by Mark Steckel of the Rockefeller University in New York. The claim of 90% of animal life, genetically speaking, being about the same age is startling. Furthermore, the pair's study turns on its head the long-held notion that species with large populations spread over the globe, humans for example, will become more genetically diverse over time. The author said that's not the case, noting that animal genetic diversity is generally about the same. And it's all in the DNA barcodes. These scientists analyzed DNA barcodes across 100,000 species and found a sign that showed almost all animals emerged about the same time as humans. What they saw was a lack of variation in so-called neutral mutations, which are the slight changes in DNA across generations that either help or hurt or maybe don't an individual's chances of survival. In other words, they were irrelevant in terms of the natural and sexual drivers of evolution. So why did this happen? Scientists like that question. Why? Well, some theories they offered were not the ones that you're probably thinking about. One fellow, Jesse Ausubel, director of the program for the human environment at Rockefeller University, told the French press that environmental trauma is one possibility. Viruses, ice ages, successful new competitors, loss of prey, all these may cause periods when the population of an animal drops sharply. In these periods, it's easier for a genetic innovation to sweep the population and contribute to the emergence of a new species. He went on to say the simplest interpretation is that life is always evolving. It's more likely that at all times in evolution, the animals alive at that point all arose at about the same time. So in this view, a species only lasts a certain amount of time before it either evolves into something new or goes extinct. And yet these scientists were surprised to learn that species have a very clear genetic boundary with nothing much in between. They just can't handle it. Got to come out of, oh, well, it could be all this thing. And then the studies show can't be that. They said if individuals are stars, then species are galaxies. They are compact clusters in the vastness of empty sequence of space. The absence of in-between species is something that also perplexed Darwin, he said. Now, this chaos continues across all sorts of spectra until or unless you understand that God created all we see. He did it in a solar week. But you see, that's so radical, that's so unbelievable as to be, well, divine. And if there is a God who is able to do this, then unless we get in line with him, there will be nothing but trouble. Oh, wait a minute. That's exactly how life works. Who knew? The concept of submission is anathema to the independent, arrogant species known as Homo sapien. Why? Well, we call it individualism, but it's more likely ignorance. Did you know there is not a single scientific discovery that contradicts the biblical narrative? When there is conflict of any sort, it is proving to be the result of ignorance. Not biblical ignorance, social, scientific ignorance. This study is illustrative. And there are still more things the Bible asserts that humankind has yet to discover. The atheist rejects the obvious in order to sleep better. You see, if there is a God, as the Bible declares, then we're not as free, not as righteous as we like to think. And we are beholden, limited, dependent, accountable. And for most people, this is way more than they can accept. Why? Well, it's called pride. It's called arrogance. And pride is the essence of sin. And sin is what lives in and dominates the core of our being. And we're talking about the very core of our being, what the Bible calls our heart, the center, the controlling factor of our being. Now, all the God deniers disagree, and you would expect they would. And they have sophisticated ideas, theories, arguments that run against all of this. They're happy with them. But as soon as they have children, that veil is lifted. You see, there has not been a 2-year-old yet who was not stubborn and rebellious. Those sweet little bundles of joy are capable of extreme anger and destruction, and all you have to do is deny them something they really want. And that, my friends, is the definition of sin. And where does that come from? The Bible teaches us it comes from our heart. Not the pump in the center of your material being, but a heart that is central to our immaterial being, the core of what we are spiritually. And why? Because we are genetically, spiritually related to our parents, who are related to their parents ad infinitum. And that's exactly what this new scientific study learned. Look for the veritable deluge of corrective, contradictory discoveries to emerge over the next several years. All sorts of people are going to stand up against this study's findings, not because the methodology was flawed, but because it's too close to what the Bible teaches us. And the Bible is the most dangerous book ever printed because it calls human beings sinners. Simply by being born a human being. But look around. What else explains human behavior? We are a culture, a species that is almost out of control. There are very few boundaries, very few control factors. And we are embracing the idea that we ought not to have any. Each generation since World War II has been progressively more liberal, more self-oriented, and more socially destructive. Tell me what you see in the future that's going to stop that downward progression. And then tell me where it's going to end up. Not in a good place. The Bible is right, has always been right, will continue to be right. It says of itself, it is forever settled in heaven. You can fuss up against it if you want. But everywhere we look, the Bible comes out on top. Just saying. I want to talk to you a little bit later about the Prepper's Blueprint. You ever hear of the Prepper's Blueprint? 7 ways to stay alive in a post-collapse society. We'll talk about that next.